You know that feeling? When someone asks you how your weekend was and your brain just goes completely blank. Not because you forgot what you did, but because something about the question feels impossible to answer, honestly, in 3 words or less. So you say fine, good, nothing much, and then you walk away feeling like you just failed a test you didn't study for. And if that is you, if small talk feels less like conversation and more like a performance you never signed up for, there is a real reason for that. And it goes deep. They're your coworker who eats lunch alone with headphones in. The friend who disappears at parties the moment the conversation turns to the weather. The person who can talk for 3 hours straight about something real, but can't get through 2 minutes of how about this heat without wanting to crawl out of their own skin. And people assume they're antisocial or rude, or that they think they're above casual conversation. But that is not even close. And here is what nobody tells you. The people who hate small talk aren't bad at conversation. They're wired for a completely different kind of it. So here is where it starts. And it is earlier than you'd expect. Picture a kid, maybe 8 or 9, sitting at the dinner table while the adults are talking. And what they're saying is nothing. Gossip about neighbors, complaints about traffic, the same recycled stories every single week. And this kid isn't bored. They're confused. Because inside their head there is a storm of real questions about why people do the things they do. And nobody at this table wants to talk about any of it. So they learn a rule early. The things that interest them aren't the things that interest most people. And that gap becomes the lens through which they see every conversation for the rest of their lives. They don't learn to hate small talk overnight. They learn to dread it. Through hundreds of conversations that felt like trying to breathe through a straw. Psychologists call it need for cognition. It is a measurable trait. Some people are literally wired to crave depth, complexity, and meaning in every single exchange they have. And roughly 31% of the population scores high enough on this scale that casual conversation genuinely registers as uncomfortable. Not rude, not elitist. Neurologically uncomfortable. Their brains are running a different operating system, one that is constantly scanning for pattern, meaning, and genuine connection underneath the words. And small talk delivers none of those things. It is like asking a deep-sea diver to get excited about a puddle. The equipment just doesn't match the depth. But here's what is fascinating. It is not just about wanting depth. There is a second thing happening underneath that makes small talk feel almost physically draining. These people aren't just bored by surface talk. They're exhausted by the constant translation it requires. Because every time someone says nice weather we're having, their brain doesn't hear a comment about weather. It hears an invitation to perform, to match energy they don't feel, to produce the right sounds that signal I am normal, and friendly, and approachable, and safe to be around. And that performance, the smiling and nodding and pretending to care about someone's parking situation, it burns through their social battery faster than anything real ever does. Because here is the paradox. Put these same people in a conversation about something that actually matters, consciousness, grief, why people self-sabotage, and they'll talk until sunrise. No fatigue, no performance, no checking the time. Because the depth itself is what recharges them, while the surface is what drains them dry. And here is where it starts to actually cost them. Because the world doesn't run on depth, it runs on small talk. Job interviews start with "tell me about yourself." Networking is 90% weather and 10% actual conversation. First dates live and die on the ability to do the surface dance before you earn the real stuff. And these people know that. They're not oblivious to the rules. They understand that small talk is the entry fee for connection. But knowing it and being able to do it without feeling like you are betraying something fundamental inside yourself, those are 2 very different things. Because to them, small talk doesn't feel like warming up. It feels like lying, saying things you don't mean to people who aren't really listening about subjects nobody actually cares about. And it starts affecting their relationships in ways they don't always see coming. Because the people who love them, the partners and the friends and the family, they sometimes need the surface stuff. They need to talk about their day without it becoming a philosophical debate. about the nature of work. And when every casual conversation gets met with silence or a one-word answer or that visible checkout behind the eyes, the other person starts feeling like they're not interesting enough, like they're boring, like their everyday life isn't worth hearing about. But it is not that. It is never that. It is that their brain is sitting there screaming, we could be talking about something that actually matters, and they don't know how to turn that voice off. Not for a minute. Not even for the people they love most. And the loneliest part is the moments when they do try, when they force themselves past the surface and finally say something real, something vulnerable, and the other person changes the subject or laughs nervously or says, wow, that is deep, and moves on, like it was a joke they didn't get. And they sit there thinking, okay, surface it is then. Again, and this is the cycle. Try, get deflected, retreat into silence. Try again months later, get deflected again. Eventually, stop trying with most people altogether, and what looks like being antisocial from the outside is actually the scar tissue of 100 conversations that went absolutely nowhere. But here is the part that changes everything. Because there is a flip side to this that most people never get to witness. When these people find their person, the one who skips the surface and goes straight to what is real, something inside them completely unlocks. They become the best conversationalist you've ever met. 3 hours vanish like minutes. You walk away feeling like somebody actually heard you for the first time in months, because they weren't withholding this whole time, they were waiting for someone who actually wanted what they have to give. Psychologist Lori Helgo calls it exactly what it is. They're not avoiding connection. They're holding out for the version of it that actually means something. And that waiting, that stubborn patience for depth over volume, it is not a flaw. It is a filter most people don't have the discipline to maintain. Because in a world that rewards quick wit and first impressions and knowing exactly what to say in every room, these people are playing a completely different game. They don't collect 100 acquaintances. They collect 4 people who know them all the way down to the bone. They don't do surface. They do marrow. And the people lucky enough to get past their small talk barrier discover something unexpected. Someone who listens like their life depends on it. Because for them, it does. Because for them, it does. A conversation that matters is the difference between feeling alive and feeling like they're just going through the motions of being a person. So, if any of this sounds like you, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken because small talk makes you uncomfortable. You are not antisocial because you'd rather sit in real silence than fake your way through another conversation about the weather. Your brain is built to go deep, and the world actually needs people who refuse to stay on the surface, even when the surface is easier and safer and expected. Because every meaningful relationship you've ever had started the exact same way. Somebody skipped the small talk, and you finally felt like you could breathe. And maybe the bravest thing isn't learning to be better at small talk. Maybe it is giving yourself permission to wait for the conversations that actually deserve your energy, and trusting that the right people will always find you, not through small talk, through the silence between it. If this hit home, I'd genuinely appreciate it if you subscribed, and if you want to support these deep dives, hit that join button, because the people who hate small talk don't hate people. They just love conversation too much to waste it on nothing. And if that is you, stop apologizing for it. The world has enough people filling silence with noise. It needs more people who know when silence itself is enough.